Welcome to this course titled Summative Assessment as designed and produced by the Region 11 Service Center. By the end of this module, you'll be able to distinguish between summative and formative assessments. You'll know the steps for creating summative assessments, and you'll be able to identify and construct test items that are aligned with learning objectives. So, our first objective is to help distinguish between formative and summative assessments. Before you begin, we'll test your knowledge. On the next few slides, you'll see images of daily life activities. Try to determine which best represents a formative test and which image best represents a summative test. After you've had time to think and decide, the solution will be revealed. Since this is a pre-assessment, you shouldn't be worried if you're uncertain of a response. Think about what you already know and do your very best. Here we have an image of a ballerina dancer dressed up in a tutu on opening night, and another image of a dancer at ballet practice. Think for a moment about the image that best represents formative assessment and which best represents summative assessment. What makes you think so? You probably guessed that opening night is related to summative assessment and dress rehearsal is related to formative. As we learned in a previous module, formative assessments are practice assessments and also referred to as checks for understanding. They're given during the teachable period when the student is in the process of mastering an objective. The teacher uses data from formative assessments to adjust instruction on the go and provides corrective help along the way. Summative assessments differ because they're given at the end when you want to sum up and assess what the student has learned throughout an entire unit, grading period, or semester. We have two more images on the slide to help distinguish the two forms of assessment, a football team on game day and a football team at practice. Think again for a moment about the image that best represents formative and which best represents summative. What makes you think so? Touchdown! Game day is summative and practice is formative. Remember, formative assessments are like drills and practice assessments. The players receive feedback and corrective help along the way. But on game day or test day, students will show their learning from all practice. Thus, summative assessments can be viewed as the final performance. Alright, one more example. Images of a child on training wheels versus riding alone on two wheels. Think again for a moment about the image that best represents formative and which best represents summative. Got it! Riding a bike with training wheels is more formative. The rider's practicing and still in the teachable period. Riding a bike alone on two wheels is the end result. It's time to show off the skills obtained. Now that we've gotten a picture of the differences between formative and summative assessments, we're ready to continue. For today's presentation, you'll need a copy of The First Days of School by Harry and Rosemary Wong. At the conclusion of this course, you'll have an opportunity to demonstrate your understanding of the learning objective by completing a 10-question summative assessment with a minimum proficiency score of 80%. So, grab a cup of coffee or decaffeinated tea if it's late, a copy of the resources, and let's get started. Alright, before we move too far ahead, let's consider a key idea which centers around the whole purpose for assessing. So tests should not be given simply to obtain a grade to determine passers and failures. Instead, we should view assessments as a tool to determine progress towards mastery of the essential knowledge and skills, as this is going to avoid labeling students as being smart or dumb. It's best for teachers to write tests before designing lessons so that the learning experiences you design truly align to the tested skills and content. Just so you know, the words assess, assessment, and test will be used interchangeably throughout this module. Please pause the video now and read pages 246 to 255 of The First Days of School, which will explore the purpose of a test, when to write a test, when to give a test, and using the test as a corrective tool. Now that you've read, let's take a closer look at how assessments are classified. So we can classify summative assessments into two major types. There are the criterion reference tests and the norm reference tests. The criterion reference tests are written to pre-stated criteria or objectives. An example of this is the STAR test, because every question is related to a TEKS. On the other hand, norm reference tests are the second type of assessment, and they're different because the results are used to measure placement on a normal distribution curve. These sorts of tests are often given at the beginning, middle, or end of the year to determine how students measure up within a population of students. Some examples of the norm reference tests are reading level tests or height-weight charts for children's growth. And we've already discussed the two kinds of tests on this slide, the formative and summative assessments. Again, formative assessments are given when the student's in the process of mastering the objective. You probably don't want to grade these tests. They simply let you know how well you're teaching and how well students are learning the objective. Of course, summative assessments are given at the end of a unit when you want to sum up what the student has learned and then determine a grade. The summative assessments can help determine the effectiveness of your unit design. On this slide, you'll see a pop-up on the upper right-hand corner of the video module that links to a video clip about the differences between formative and summative assessments. Since the two types are often confused, you should become crystal clear about how they differ. Please pause the video now and pay close attention to this information, as it's related to one of your learning objectives. Now that we've seen the video, it's your turn to test your understanding of formative and summative tests. At this time, please pause the video and go to the Canvas resources for this module and take the practice quiz to informally assess your learning. Hope you did well on your practice quiz. At this time, we will continue with our learning objective for this module and describe the steps for creating summative assessments. Ultimately, students need to know 4 things that are expected from them: what they'll learn, how they'll learn it, how they'll demonstrate what they've learned, and how the quality of their learning will be evaluated. A goal for teaching is students' achievement of the objectives you create, which of course are related to the TEKS. To reach that point, the teacher plans 2 things: the method of assessment and the instructional strategies used to teach the objective. Effective teachers begin with the end in mind and create lessons using backwards design. The backwards design process includes these 3 steps. Step 1, identify desired results. What do you want your students to know and be able to do? These are your lesson objectives. Step 2, determine acceptable evidence. This would be the tests used to assess student performance. Finally, step 3, plan learning experiences and instruction. What activities, materials, and resources will be used to help the student learn and reach the desired results. In a previous slide, we discussed what students need to know about the expectations we have on performances. Scoring guides are tools that are most often called rubrics in education circles and help students reflect and come to an understanding about their performance on assessments. Let's spend some time to learn a bit more about rubrics. Students want to know up front how they'll be scored, judged, and graded. Students gain confidence in their attempt when they know exactly what they need to do to reach the desired proficiency. Scoring guides also improve communications with parents and lead to consistent, transparent grading practices. There are 3 major parts of a scoring guide. The first part is the criteria, which names the category or trait that'll be scored. The second part is the point values assigned to levels of performance in that category. A scale of 0 to 4 fits most performance levels. And the third part of a scoring guide is the performance expected. Define the characteristics of each point value in each category. Remember this key idea from the beginning of the module? The purpose of a test is to assess how well each student has mastered the lesson objectives. When you assess only for grading purposes, you're labeling students. When you assess for accomplishment, you're helping each student achieve success. We'll now take a look at tips for writing a test. Please pause the video and read pages 250 to 251 of the First Days of School. Pay close attention to this information as it's related to one of your learning objectives. When writing a test, remember, objectives govern what students are to learn or turn in for the assignment. Objectives govern how the teacher writes the test. Certain types of test items are better suited for assessing exactly what you want to measure and increase the validity of assessment. Two examples of question types are limited choice or open-ended questions. Limited choice items are exactly what the name suggests, limited to a few choices. Some examples are true or false, multiple choice, and matching questions. On the other hand, open-ended questions generally require higher levels of thought and synthesis. Some examples are fill-in-the-blank questions, short response questions, essays, problem-solving scenarios, and performance tests. Just like teachers adjust instruction on the go from formative assessments, teachers use results from summative assessments to share data and game plan for future impact. If the teacher does not formulate a plan to address severe deficiencies, students are in danger of minimized learning as the year progresses. At this point, we have another opportunity for you to show what you know. Here we have a list of different assessments. Can you distinguish which of these are examples of summative assessments? We'll see the results on the next slide. How'd you do? If you successfully selected 5 or more correctly, you're on your way to mastery of this summative assessment module. In summary, a summative assessment evaluates student learning, knowledge, proficiency, or success at the conclusion of a unit, course, or program. Summative assessments are generally weighted heavier than daily assignments, and teachers' responsiveness and instruction according to the results of daily formative assessments allow students to be better prepared for summative assessments. Here are some things to remember about summative assessments. Many associate summative assessments only with standardized tests such as state assessments. However, unit assessments and curriculum-based assessments, sometimes provided by the district, all serve the purpose to measure the sum of students' knowledge. Summative assessment is an accountability measure that's generally used as part of the grading process. The key is to think of summative assessment as a means to gauge at a particular point in time student learning relative to the content standards. All right, we're nearing the end of this course. You'll have an opportunity to demonstrate your understanding by completing a 10-question summative assessment with a minimum proficiency score of 80%. If you need to go back and review any of the material covered in this module, do it so now before you take your final summative assessment. When you're ready, pause the video, navigate to the Canvas resources for this module, and take the summative quiz. Great job! Hope you did well on your summative quiz over summative assessment. Thank you for watching this course module, and feel free to review this video at any time. Today's material referenced The First Days of School by Harry and Rosemary Wong, and also information from nycc.edu. Pictures from this presentation were downloaded from Pixabay.